Today on UVA Legends podcast, I have Tony Covington, the voice of UVA football, a guy I've been trying to get on for a long time. Tony was a star safety on the Mythical 1990 UVA team, had an NFL career, has done so much that we're going to get into. Tony, thanks for doing this. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, man. Glad to be here, my guy.
Thank you, man. So, well, look, I just want to give a kind of the outline of your career because it's pretty extraordinary. I believe I know you're from Winston-Salem. I assume you grew up in Winston-Salem.
Yes.
Okay, North Carolina. You were an 86 graduate. What was your high school, Tony?
Parkland High School.
Parkland High School. You were at UVA when I was there. We used to play some pickup ball together. Fierce competitor. You were a 4-year starter. As I said before, starting safety, star safety on the 1990 team. Drafted in the 4th round by the Buccaneers, started your first year, had a 4 or 5 year NFL career, and I think you played a little arena ball after that. And you write about this in your book, and you eloquently speak about it. Once an NFL career is over, what's next? And you didn't play at the time when everyone was making $5-10 million a year, so you had to find a way to recreate yourself. And you wrote a book, I Am Underdog, A Journey of Adversity and Blessings, which talks a lot about the journey. And you've worked in corporate America, non-profs. I know you worked for the United Negro College Fund, I believe, and special education, like your brother Ray Roberts, I believe, as well, and did some sales. And then did some fantastic media work, not only for UVA football, but with your boy Hawk. You guys have a great podcast, The Lockdown. Folks should tune in if they haven't already. But Tony, did I get most of that right?
Yeah. Pretty. You hit it spot on. I was a corner at Virginia, though. So I'm in a safety in the NFL. So a lot of people get those backwards. They're like, "Well, how did that happen?" I was a physical corner in college, and so I was a safety trapped in a corner's body.
Exactly.
So it had the safety mentality.
Right.
But then when I went to the next level, they slotted me at safety, and so started as a rookie at strong safety at about 188 pounds.
Wow. Has that changed at all? Is the corner still the speed position and the safety more the physical position? Has that changed over time?
Man, the game has changed so much now. I mean, you have, where it was back then, you had the smaller guys, faster guys playing on the outside at corner. Man, now you have corners that are 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", because they have the ability to move and turn, and because the game is so pass oriented now. You still have guys that love to mix it up and play physical in the secondary, but they can't play as physical as it used to be because of the rules and all of the things that have happened with concussions.
Yeah. Well, I know you're a fierce competitor. That's kind of your before Underdog. That was your brand. You're a fighter. Where do you see you in today's game? Do you think today's game would have suited you as well as when you played, or you think it would have been different for you?
I probably would struggle in today's game because, I could run with the best of them, but I love the physical nature of the game. And, any big hit now, there's a flag coming out. It's defenseless receiver or unnecessary roughness. And, I'm like, well, how is he supposed to tackle a guy? I mean, and so I probably would struggle. I mean, I would adjust, but it wouldn't be the same type of physicality that I prided myself being a part of.
Yeah. Well, you're close to some of the players I know because of your media work. So I'm sure you interview people. Are the athletes different today than when you played? Are they, I think it's easy for us to stereotype them as being less hungry than our generation, where we fought for everything. We probably weren't as wealthy as this generation was. Are the athletes themselves different than when you played?
Well, I think each generation you have to adapt to what you have available. When I look now at guys, I feel they're filled like somebody owes them something, that's self-empowered. That part I struggle with because to me, it's all about refusing to be outworked. That was always the thing. You work the hardest, you earn a spot, and now it's everybody gets a trophy. And so the mentality is, look at the transfer portal, look at NIL. Now, mind you, some of those things were needed, but how they're set up, if I'm not happy in my situation, somebody beat me out, I'm going to transfer and go to another school. Whereas sure, we could have done that back in the day, but then you had to sit out a year. And for us, it was really about the work. It was 2-a-days, it was 3-a-days. And I think you have to adjust with the times. But these guys would struggle in those times because, in my opinion, they haven't had to kind of go through the struggles that we had to go through back in the day, from an accessibility standpoint, from the nutrition, from the equipment. They have so many advantages in the game now, and the game needed to assist them with that. So, it's not that they didn't need it, but the advantages that they have now are significant in comparison to what we had to deal with.
So you think in some ways it's harder to be hungrier now because whenever you get a roadblock, you can just go to the next school and you can get paid now. At least some of the athletes are getting paid. So you think in some ways it doesn't encourage you to be as hungry as the athletes were in your day?
Agreed. Because, and then how do you don't know how to handle adversity? Because if I don't have to grind and work for something because I can just jump ship when I'm not happy, how does that teach you how to deal with adversity in life? Because the sports piece is kind of a microcosm of what life is and the lessons that you learned as an athlete. They've helped me get through some tough times and struggles in life and dealing with adversity and overcoming that adversity. And so if it's so easy to quit and to jump ship and to do something else because there's resistance that you're facing, I don't think that sets you up to be successful in life.
Yeah, I agree. Well, before we get back to the Winston-Salem days, I want to talk a little bit about your media work. Being the voice of UVA football, and I did Jim Miller as well, and he was great to talk to, and it gets you a chance to stay attached to the team. I mean, you have to do your homework. You got to know what's going on. What has that meant to you that you can still be involved with UVA football and do something that you're very good at is working media?
It's been great, man. I am still thankful for the opportunity to be able to do it. Didn't have a background in it, but have always been comfortable in front of the camera. I still say I have a voice for radio, a face for radio. But I've enjoyed it thoroughly. It keeps me around the program. When I got into it at Virginia, I started to mentor a lot of guys. So it allows me to really help these young men experience life, because one of the things that I would hear, quite honestly, Julian, was when I'd ask guys, what's your major, what are you planning to do with that? And I kept hearing, I have no idea, over and over again. Well, that's not the conversation I want to have with you your junior year of college, because we should be thinking, I mean, I know everybody wants to play in the NFL or play in the NBA, but the percentages are small that you get that opportunity. So what are our other plans? What's the fallback? And I kept hearing that and saying to myself, man, I didn't plan on going to the NFL when I went to UVA. It was about getting a degree to get a good job when it was over. I just happened to have a great career and got the opportunity to play for 5 years in the NFL. Well, when the game quit me, I still had the degree. So I'm like, well, that was house money. I hadn't planned on that anyway, even though I loved the game. And it was hard because they were like, hey, the jobs will come to you. Well, that wasn't the case. I didn't know internships. I hadn't networked. I didn't know to do those type of things. I only kind of what they taught me. Was get the degree. And so I turned myself into a nonprofit executive through grind, hustle, and once again, refusing to be outworked. And so what I wanted to do was pour into these young men and say, man, we're good for telling a kid to create a plan for their life, but we don't show them how to create the plan. And so it became very important for me to kind of start helping these young men shape the plan around what the interest that they have. We start out with simple, hey, what are you interested in outside of sports? And then we start to build a plan from there. And so I started to really hone in on what I call those life skills development pieces, and really helping guys develop that plan for themselves. And I've had some really, really great success stories. And it's a passion of mine, and so want to be able to do it on a larger scale at some point. But man, yeah, it kind of started there with me, and so this radio medium has allowed me to be able to pour into these young men and be around the game that I love, the school that I love, and just be a fan of the game.
Yeah. Well, one thing I see that you do is you are yourself when you're on the radio or when you're on the podcast. You don't try to have like a media Tony Covington. You talk like you're talking to me, or you talk to your boys in the gym. And was that conscious that I'm gonna be myself when I'm on the radio, or did people tell you, Tony, that really works for you? You gotta stick with what you do?
Well, I think I only know how to be me. I have significant knowledge of the game. I understand it. That part's easy. I think my former play-by-play guy, Dave King, taught me a lot, taught me about the game and how to be a better broadcaster. So, he would critique things. He's like, all right, your passion, it comes through, but all right, there's pull back a little bit on it, So, I mean, we know you're a homer, but, the people feel the dejection when you feel it. And sometimes you just have to be, that even keel, as much as it pains you and it hurts you because you've been on that field and you know how it actually feels. And so, he taught me a lot. My current guy, John Freeman, he jumped in, season and a half ago, really lobbied for him to get that job, man. He is just a phenomenal guy, phenomenal team player. We just have a really good core group that we work with. And I love when Ball Hawk is on the sideline, because he and I, we are so connected as former players. We see the game similarly. And so a lot of times I can tell Hawk to look for something and he's already on it, or, hey, where's such and such? And he can track him down and like, hey, tell such and such this is what I see. And, so to be around the game like that, man, it's just, I love it.
Are there national media personalities that you also model after, that you enjoy the work and they inspire you as well?
No, not at all, really. I mean, when I'm watching a football game, I could turn the volume down. Because for me, it's watching the game. When I hear good commentary, like I love Louis Riddick when he does commentary, because he knows the game. He's a safety. He's a safety mentality. So, we view the game differently. And so I love when he does commentary. I think the commentators that kind of get in the way or seem to, I'm like, just shut up. Just, sometimes you just don't have to say anything. You don't have to talk about every single thing. I love, the play-by-play guy that Dave and John are able to do. I applaud those guys. I love being the color analyst, because I'm painting the picture. I'm painting in between the lines. I'm telling you why that story, why that play was so successful. I may have, then a key player may do something like, yeah, you know what? I got a Instagram from his aunt talking about him this, I love that part of it. Mm-hmm. And I think the fans enjoy that. And they know that I'm candid. I call it like I see it. If it stinks, I'm going to say it stinks. As much as I love my university, I call it like I see it.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned like an athletes that do commentary, and I do as well. Like, for example, I love Charles Barkley. When Charles Barkley does it, you do a great job for UVA. But I don't want to hear Steve Smith, a guy that didn't play. I mean, I know he played at Winston-Salem, but I just feel like some people are deliberately provocative. And to me, I find that gets in the way. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but do you kind of agree with me on that one?
I agree wholeheartedly. Some people are just blowhards, and, I'm just like, they're just talking just to hear themselves talk and screaming. And I'm like, shut up. Once again, I'm like, it's so unnecessary. And I'm like, okay, that's your brand and that's your thing. Do you? But I don't particularly care for it.
No, especially a guy's been on the field, and when he's really critical of people, I think, I think you lose perspective when you actually haven't been in the arena, at least to your extent yourself. And what about your podcast? Now, you and Hawk do a great job. I don't know Hawk, but I enjoy listening to you guys. What did you set out to create when you guys created your podcast, and what are some of your goals with it?
Well, I mean, I think with it, the guys from Locker Room Access reached out to me because there was something. I had done a podcast with the guys at Cavs Corner, and it was around the time something had happened. I can't remember specifically what it was. And somebody on Twitter said, man, Cov should do a podcast talking about football with the guys at Locker Room Access. And so they hit me up and was like, let's go. And so we started talking and chatting. And so then they had me on their podcast, and we got to talking a little bit more. Hey, we want to delve into football because they've been really focused on basketball, and they do a wonderful job. And so they said, we'd love to get into the football space too. Would you be interested? And I said, only if Ahmad Hawkins would be my partner, And so Ball Hawk has his own brand. I am Ball Hawk, and he's amazing. And he is growing. He's being asked to do a lot more at the university. And I knew that was going to be the case because he's so good. And so he, someone that I'm extremely proud of, and at his evolution. And I look forward to doing games with, and doing our podcast with, because we both are very similar with that. We're going to call it like we see it. We're, that saying, to that own self be true. That is us. And we have a very similar perspective on how we view the game and how we view commentary. And the people that are on our show, they know that we're going to keep it 8 past 92 at all times. There's no faking, we're not going to BS you. It's just what you see is what you get. And, it's just, I think it's reassuring, and the conversation kind of just flows because it's not like an interview. It is a conversation. And one of my fraternity brothers gave us the best compliment. He said, I feel like when I listen to you guys on the podcast, I feel like I walked into my house, picked up the phone, and there was a conversation going on in the other room, and I just listened. And so I thought that was a great compliment to us. And, so as we're about to debut for this particular season this week, we're super excited to continue the brand and grow the brand.
Yeah, I've interviewed several people that you guys have had on. And whenever I do, I don't listen to you guys first, because if I do, you guys get in the weeds with them, you play with them, and it's hard for me, from my perspective, to do that. So I won't even listen to it until after I've done mine, because otherwise it'll color how I try to do my interview, because it's going to be a whole different level. When you guys have been competing and you guys had that rapport. So real quickly, before we get into North Carolina and you get into sports and growing up, I wanted to. I know your daughter, unfortunately, your oldest daughter, is at UNC. There was an incident yesterday, a lockdown. I'm sorry to hear that. This is happening way too often. And I wanted to ask you, as a person who's still involved with the program, a key member of the program, what do you think the lasting effects are going to be to our program of Deshaun Perry, Devin Chandler, and Lavelle Davis? These are three people that were mercilessly murdered last year. It's an incident none of us can really make sense of, because it doesn't seem to be any connection. It just seems to be it was different than the random violence that we see, but it was still something that we can't understand. What do you see as some of the legacies of that incident?
Well, I think that we want to pay respects to these young men, because they, from my standpoint, they're my brothers, and lost way too young. Talked to two of them the day before at the game, right. And knowing the parents and having conversations with the parents, the struggle of that. I think what Mike Hollins is doing is simply amazing, to be even able to get back to play at a level. And I think that he will have a tremendous year this year, because it's a different perspective that you're playing for. Not to say that anyone has ever taken the sport for granted, but I think it gives you an entirely different perspective. I think you'll see a team that's playing, there'll be more cohesion, because they're playing for something bigger than themselves. The memory of their fallen teammates. I mean, life could be over in an instant. And that's we as you alluded to, it's constant reminders of, when we hear about a mass shooting, in the most crazy places, that it can happen anywhere. And so to live in the moment, to never take a day for granted, to treasure each day as a gift, I think this team will come together with a different perspective. And I'm looking forward to seeing that part, to celebrating Deshaun, Devin, and Lavelle each and every week, and just being appreciative for the opportunity that life brings us, and the gift of breath every day that we get.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So, well, Tony, and also I'm glad you're optimistic about the season, because most people that I've talked to, they don't seem completely optimistic. So I agree. Maybe this will be an emotional lift for them. And they can and make the most out of this situation. Well, Tony, I wanted to go back to Winston-Salem. I remember you being from there, because when I first met you, you talked about home. And how did you get into sports? Did you come from a sports family?
No, I mean, my mom was a country girl from Virginia. My dad, ninth grade education from the School of Hard Knocks. Had to drop out of high school to take care of family. I think dad punted or something like that, the one year he played. But it was, for me, my dad was always supportive, guys in the neighborhood, that we played. I was the smallest guy in the neighborhood, but we always played, and basketball was my first love. I thought I was going to be a hoop star. I would walk a mile to the court every day, dribbling with my right hand there, dribbling with my left hand home. I would always go to big court and wait to be picked and be like, all right, I got little man. And, I would drive them crazy, stealing the ball, raining shots from the outside. But it really advanced my skill. And I started playing football in the ninth grade. Didn't get a chance to play with my friends from the neighborhood. Went to the boys club, and I talk about this story all the time. I went to the boys club to play with them, but I was little, so they looked at me like, yeah, we're already full. We're not taking any more applicants. So, but you can go across town to play for this other organization. So I did, and it kind of just grew from there. And then finally got to play with my friends in high school, and it was a unique journey, being able to play multiple sports and being good at multiple sports. I think I ran track one year, and that was enough to realize that I wasn't a track runner. And then my senior year, I played basketball, football, and tennis. And so those were my three sports. I was really good at. I was all-state in two of those, and and so it led me to the university. And the recruiting story for Virginia, it's not that they were recruiting me until a coach walked into our hallway as I'm studying film on a game day, and he had on a Virginia sweater, and we had a tremendous tailback, and that everybody was recruiting. And he said, "Hey, tell me about this kid, Kennard Martin." I said, "Sure." And so I said, "That's him, number 22. And so he's like, "Wow, he's really good." And I said, "This guy, you should check out number 7 as well." He said, "Well, who's that?" I said, "That's me." And so we laughed and chuckled, and then I had a great game that night. And then they started recruiting me from there. And then a bunch of other ACC schools started recruiting me. And that was kind of the legend of it.
Wow. Were you always in the defensive backfield?
Yes, I was a quarterback. And most of that time I was a quarterback in high school. Then I played defensive back my senior year. I always played defense leading up to that. My junior year, we had the number 1 defense in the state. So I was just a backup quarterback that played more than the starter. And then it was my time to be the guy. My senior year, I broke my hand the first day of camp. And so they allowed me to play defense while I was waiting for my hand to heal. And I was just crushing people on defense. And so I was the starting quarterback after game 3, and I didn't leave the field. Someone would bring my gloves on, and I would go play corner, on defense.
Wow. What is the sports tradition at Winston-Salem? I don't really, I know they had a great basketball team, Clarence Big House Gaines, but is it a sports a city?
Yeah, there's a lot of talent that comes out of that city. I mean, back in those days, man, we had some big time talent to come out that played at big schools, NC State and Maryland. So it ran the gamut and in multiple sports. We had hoop. It was a hoop town. So I mean, Virginia, North Carolina is that basketball haven, but we had some tremendous athletes holistically coming out of that town.
Yeah. Did you have basketball offers out of high school as well, or just football?
Small basketball, but and honestly, I almost didn't play basketball my senior year, but we had a center who had an opportunity to get a scholarship. So I was a starting point guard, and so I was like, all right, Zeb, I got you. So I ended up playing. Still was all conference, but we ended up, man, third round of the state playoffs, but he got an opportunity to go to school. A couple other guys did too. And, I was happy to be a part of that.
Yeah. So when you play high school sports in Winston-Salem, I'd imagine when you were playing ACC football, you're seeing tons of kids on the field that you played against when you were in high school, basketball or football. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. The rivalry was great. And for me, never losing. So I think to North Carolina schools, I was 15-1.
Wow.
As a starter, so there's a couple of guys that went to NC State who were big time prospects from a rival high school, never lost to those guys as a starter. And so, I'd always, give them hell about that.
Would you guys chat on the field?
Oh, of course. Imagine me not chatting on the field.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you ended up going to UVA, obviously, as you mentioned. So, who recruited you from the UVA staff? Was it George Welsh himself? And what did you think about George Welsh when you first met him?
So Danny Wilmer was the coach that walked into that hallway that when I was watching that game. And so he was my recruiter. Danny recruited a lot of kids from North Carolina. And he was just an amazing individual. He still lives in the Virginia area, but man, Coach Wilmer, just that Southern drawl that he had, was just someone that we really trusted. And he pulled a lot of talent out of North Carolina, a lot of talent. And George Welsh was that kind of guy. I think you looked at him and he was kind of off-putting if you didn't know him. But then when he realized that, okay, I've got to adjust a little bit to how, because we came in, when that class of 86 came in, we were very different. We were a bunch of hellraisers, but we were players. And I think George adjusted a little bit to us, but he was also that fiery guy that we all respected. He commanded respect. He earned our respect, and we would absolutely run through a wall for him. And, I always have nothing but great things to say about him. Rest in peace. But yeah, that was the guy. George was the guy.
Who was in that class? I believe Sean Moore would have had to be in that class.
Yeah, Sean Moore, Ray Savage, Marcus Wilson, Derek Boyd, Ron Carey, Joe Hall, Chris Stearns. Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of guys. Keith McMeans. We had a lot of guys in that class, and a lot of us started our redshirt freshman year. I mean, we came in about the work, and that first year most of us got redshirted. We were 3-8. A couple of guys that started, Ray Savage, and he was one of the guys, and Kevin Cook. But most of those guys, man, we just took over jobs. We put people on the bench after that first year because we were like, we're not going to sit back. We didn't come here to be a losing program, and we proceeded to go to bowls 3 out of the next 4 years as starters.
Yeah. Was it tough for you when your identity is all wrapped up in being a football player? Is it tough for you to redshirt and not play? Here you are at UVA. You walk around with the white T-shirt with the UVA on it, like all the players did, but you're not in the games. Was that tough?
It was hard because I was used to playing, and used to being a significant contributor. So it was very hard. We made practice difficult because we, as a scout team, we went after the offense. And because for us, the goal was to make Saturday easy. And so, I mean, we'd get cursed out by the coaches some days because we were going a little bit too hard. But, ultimately the goal, like I said, was to make Saturday easy, give them the best look that we could give them. We were physical. And I think it was kind of a precursor to, man, these guys have potential. I think these guys could potentially be really good. And it showed, once we got in the games, it was a different type of swagger. It was a different type of attitude that Virginia was used to.
Yeah. Well, what was your first impressions of the university as a student there? I mean, were the kids, the students, the same as you knew in North Carolina? I talked to Ray Roberts about this, and also Jason Wallace. It's an adjustment when you come from a smaller city, or for Ray's point of view, his family was poor. Was going to UVA an adjustment for you at all?
I think just the being away from home was probably a little bit different for me. I mean, I had a great roommate in Derek Boyd, who was from North Carolina. I mean, we're still close to this day, and I think he and I were very different because we both were country boys in North Carolina, but we had a different kind of flavor to us. We would, I came on my official visit, man, I had on plaid shorts, pink shirt, red sunglasses. I mean, being somebody, you're like, okay, where's this kid from? He doesn't look like a country boy from North Carolina. So we had a different kind of flavor to us. We went to New York on spring break. We came back with colored Diodoras and all kind of, and so, some people viewed us as very different. You're going to always have your haters. So we had some folks hating on us, but we were true to who we were. And we were both players. And so I think having him there helped significantly. I think we helped each other. And I love the fact that we were able to live among the students. I think that my experience would have been very different if we would have had an all athletic dorm. I think it would have, because I got to know the students. We ate with the athletes, so you got to know the different athletes in Bryant Hall. But being able to live amongst the students, you just really got to know people, and so I like the flavor of that.
Yeah. How did you perceive the race relations at UVA when you first got there, being from Winston-Salem?
For me, I was used to being, I was able to, my classes, I was in advanced classes in high school. So I had a mix of a lot of white kids in my class, Asian kids in my class, very few Black kids in my classes. But, I was an athlete. So I always hung with my boys outside of class, on the field, at home. So I was able to kind of walk in both worlds, and so I was comfortable at a UVA. And then connecting with my teammates, connecting with the student body, it was like we had our own little HBCU inside of a PWI. And I think that's why our UVA connection is still so very tight. That's why so many of us come back for Black Alumni Weekend, because we had each other and we could count on each other. We had BBS was our communication highway, and we never missed a thing. We didn't have cell phones, but you never missed a thing, And so yeah, I didn't struggle with that as much as others, because I always had the ability to adapt and be a chameleon, if you will.
Yeah. One thing about you that surprised me in college at UVA was there was some tension between the athletes and the fraternities when we were there, the Black fraternities and the athletes. There had been some tension. And I remember when you pledged, and there were some athletes that pledged. I know John Ford had pledged Sigma. There were others. I can't rattle them off now, but it wasn't that common. So when did you decide you wanted to be an Omega? And was that a surprising decision to some people?
Yeah, it was surprising to a lot of people. And I think for me, I didn't care. got exposure to the Men of Omega when I was in high school. I was in a program called Upward Bound, and it was on the campus of Winston-Salem State. So I would see the plot, I would see the Men of Omega, because we were there, we were living on campus for a portion of the summer, taking classes and whatnot. And then in our local newspaper, the Winston-Salem Chronicle, is kind of like the Black community newspaper. You would always see members of Omega doing great things in the community, always serving, always providing. And so I said, I'm going to take a look at that when I get to college. I mean, I was the first one to go to college in my family. And so there was no Greek affiliation. There was no history within it. And so when I got to school, kind of got wrapped up in ball, and then, started to see a couple of Omegas on the grounds, started listening to what they were about. And some of the graduate brothers, got introduced to them, talking to them. And so things just kind of moved forward, and decided to go through the process myself. And it's been one of the most rewarding things and one of the best decisions that I've ever made.
But how did you balance it? I mean, it's hard enough, and I know a lot of folks who don't know about the line process, and I don't know much about it because I never went online. But from what I know, it's time consuming. There's a lot to do. You don't get much sleep. There's not much time to eat. All these things that you have to try to manage, and you're playing football. So how are you able to do all those things?
If it's worth having, it's worth working for, and if you want something and you want it with everything in your being, you're willing to sacrifice and make those sacrifices. And I was willing to do that. It's one of the most challenging things that I've ever done, quite honestly, but also one of the most rewarding. And so, yeah, I mean, that was it. Everybody was extremely surprised when they saw me online. But they were extremely proud of me once I crossed as well.
Yeah. Have you ever given advice to an athlete who says, Tony, I want to pledge? What do you think? Have you ever said to the athlete, it's going to be very difficult for you? You got to think deeply about it. I mean, are you encouraging when people come? Or you tell them the truth, or how do you approach that question? Because I'm sure it's asked of you.
Well, I think it's one of those things where I speak to the brotherhood of what we're about. We're a service organization. The brotherhood is like nothing you could ever imagine. And people are like, well, but, football, you guys seem like you're a fraternity. Yeah, it somewhat, you are. That football team is kind of that fraternity, and it is a brotherhood within itself. But there's nothing like the fraternal bonds of a Greek letter organization, in my opinion. And so anyone that would seek membership, I would ask the question, why? And to do a little bit of research, to find out about the organization, to get to know the brothers that you're interested, in being a part of their organization, and then figure out whether that's something that you want for self. I would never discourage anyone from doing it because, as I said, it's just been a tremendous thing for me in my lifetime, and I've been a part of Mega Sci-Fi for 33 years now.
Wow, God, we're getting old, Tony. So
yeah.
Yeah. So let's get to your redshirt freshman year, sophomore on second year on campus. Now you can play. You had an incredibly smooth adjustment to the games, at least from my point of view. Mm-hmm. What were your memories of the adjustment to playing ACC football?
I think for me, one thing I always believed in my skills and my ability, because I was always willing to work hard. And you may have been faster than me or stronger than me, but you weren't going to outwork me. And when you have that it gives you confidence. When you've put in the time, it gives you a tremendous confidence when you go on the field. And always believed in myself. And I was around great teammates who believed in themselves, and we believed in each other because we put in so much work together, and we knew that we could count on each other. And so it was, for me, I loved being able to be in the mix, and to be a part of it. Never felt like the game was too big for me. Always felt like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, playing at a high level, and I'll only get better. And so it was evaluating after that first year, and we go to the All-American Bowl, and yeah, it was great. And I had a bravado and a cockiness about me because I believed in me. I believed in my team. And, whether it was me with a towel that drug the ground and said played in full, or whether I was cutting the opponent's logo in my head, whether I was talking trash in the newspaper, it didn't matter. For me, it was about the team, and it was never a thing to kind of elevate Tony Covington. It was about the team. It was about taking pressure off of them, because if they're worried about what Tony Covington has to say, then they'll slip up and get hit over the head with a hammer, by a Cavalier squad who was coming for them. And so that's kind of how I always rolled. That was my modus operandi, and I loved it.
Yeah. Well, what was your relationship with J-Dub, Jason Wallace? He's another great dude, another little guy, fast little guy, just like you. He was on the other corner. You guys were, one of the strengths of the team. What was your relationship? Was it competitive ever? Or, everyone loves J-Dub. Were you guys always boys?
Yes, from the rip. It just, I think for us, when guys come in and you see that they're about the work and that they can help you win, you support them, because they, it was the same way when Kirby and Slade came in. They came in highly touted, but they came in about the work. And so same thing for J-Dub. He came in, real slight. Derek Boyd gave him the nickname The Fly because, when Jason got on you, you couldn't get him off. He was literally like a fly. And despite his slight frame, he played with a big heart. He made plays, and we've always vibed off each other. He was on the field side. I was on the short side. I was a physical one. He was the cover guy, and we just always really worked well and always supported each other, and our families were close as well.
Yeah. Well, your generation of Wahoo football players, it was the first time we had maintained a level of excellence in UVA football. And the first 2 years, we finished really strong. Both years, I believe we won the last 5 regular season games or so, and then won the All-American Bowl against, I think, BYU. And then your third year playing, another strong year. Going into that incredible 1990 season, which we all still talk about. You were interviewed on that great ACC documentary about it. Did we know that something special was going to happen this year, that we were going to get over the hump and go to the next level?
Yeah, we knew we were extremely talented at every level of our ball club. We had so much talent. We had an offense that was so explosive. It was virtually unstoppable. And defensively, we had some guys that were some hellraisers. We flew around, and when you played a Virginia team, we were going to hit you. You knew that you were going to be hit. And we just had that lunch pail mentality every week that we were going to serve you, and when it came to that year, we knew that we were on the cusp because we kept flirting with it. And we're like, all right, guys, we can make some things happen. We just need to put a couple of new different things. We need to get ourselves over what it's going to take. What is it going to take? And it was just like the small things, Julian, that we were able to cut that really pushed us over the hump.
Yeah. Well, one of the key moments of that year is we finally beat Clemson, and Clemson had beaten UVA. I don't know how many straight years, but I was talking to Jake McCartney about this. It might have been 30 straight years or something like that.
29 straight. Yeah.
29 straight years. So what was it like in your mind when we finally beat Clemson?
It was awesome, but they had been escaping the last couple of years that we knew we were right there. I think the year before we lost to them 10-7, it was, they went from dominating us to, we were in such competitive games, and we loved playing them because it was always a physical game. We knew what we were going to get when we played them. They knew what they were going to get when they played us, but we started leveling the playing field, so to speak, with from a talent standpoint. And so to finally be able to get over the hump and beat them, and to have that crowd rush the field, every player should have a rush the field moment because there's absolutely nothing like it. Was something, man, that I will never ever forget. People always say, what's your favorite game? That for me, that'll always be my favorite game because there was so much history behind it. No one will ever forget it. And that was my first rush the field moment. So it was pretty awesome.
It was great. I was down there too. So when you think about that Clemson team, you finally beat them, got over the hump. The thing I would say about UVA in those days is we had talented players, but the difference between like a UVA and a Clemson or a Nebraska back then or whatever is they may have 5 deep at every position. UVA, we had incredible talent at almost every position now, but we weren't deep. Did you guys feel that we were deep enough that year to compete on the highest level?
Yeah, we did. We felt like, and UVA will never have a consistent depth of 3, 4, and 5 stars down but we just played with, like I said, that lunch pail type of mentality. And that's kind of what I want to see us get back to, playing with that kind of mentality. But yeah, man, we felt we had so much belief in us and each other that we didn't care how much depth they had. It wasn't going to matter. We were going to play. I don't care if we had to play all day long in a parking lot. We had their number and we felt like they knew.
Yeah. Well, after we beat Clemson, the schedule was pretty favorable for a while. And I remember we won all the games really easily, actually. And I remember when we were first #1 USA Today, and I was living behind the corner, and I walked by Mincer's, and they had the paper stand out, the racks out, and they had USA Today, UVA #1. I remember I bought that. I usually wouldn't buy the paper, but I bought that. It was so unbelievable that we were #1. Do you remember that moment and that feeling?
Yeah, I mean, we knew we were flirting with it, and so then when we finally got that acknowledgement, it was kind of like, all right, now let's take it to the next level, because at that point we're thinking we got a chance to win a national championship.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the Georgia Tech game. And I know you talked about this on the documentary, and I'm sure you probably think about this game at least once a week, maybe, but I'm sure you think about it sometimes. When you think about going into that game, we were confident, and Georgia Tech was, coached by Bobby Ross, a very fine team. But I don't think anyone thought, at least the fans thought, that we would have any trouble with Georgia Tech. What was your mindset going in?
We knew that was going to be a tough game, but we felt like we were the better team. And even though we lost on the last second field goal, we were the better team. And I acknowledge as much after the game in the post-game interviews that, because I talked a lot that week about Ken Swilling, because I was tired of hearing them talk about this big safety and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's overrated, and so it was like, ooh, what do you mean? I said, he's 6'3", 225 pounds. You guys talk about the big hits he makes. I was like, he's 6'3", 225. He's supposed to make big hits. I said, I'd rather take Keith McMeans, who can cover, who can manage the hole, who was a better overall athlete in my estimation. I just called it like it was. And so that was a big thing in the paper. And Herman went out there and ate his lunch like I knew he would. And so in that presser after the game, they were like, Tony, you had a lot to say after the game, this week. What happened? I said, well, the best team didn't win today. And I said, and when Tony Covington says somebody's overrated, he means it. And I got up and walked out.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, we were all distraught. And when you look back on it, I know as an athlete, you have to look forward. You can't get wrapped up in what you could have done. Mm-hmm. If you could take one thing back from that game personally, because there's so many plays in that game where if it would have went a different way, we would have won the game. I mean, there was a fumble where it hit someone. I forgot exactly what happened, but it was like the most unlikely fumble ever. Maybe it was Nick. It might have been Nicky.
The ball out of Sean's hand.
Yeah,
he was going to block. Yeah,
that's what it was. But if you could go back and do one thing differently in that game, is there anything you would have done differently?
From a defensive standpoint, I wish we wouldn't have gotten so conservative, and I think because we were manhandling them in the first half,
Yeah.
but we were going after them defensively, we got conservative in the second half. And I will say this until my dying days, we started playing not to lose instead of playing to win in the second half of that game. And a turnover here, a turnover there, they got a little momentum. And because it's like we turned off the fire hose and, when we tried to turn it back on, there was no water coming out, so to speak. And it gave them momentum. And then it just comes down to a possession. Anything can happen. And so, they made some plays down the stretch.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about the rest of the season? We came back at a nice road win against UNC. But then we lost to Maryland. Devastating loss. We lost Sean Moore in that game. We lost to Tech, which back then losing to Tech was just a horrible feeling back then. I think Duke was a bigger rival, or UNC, or whoever now. But back then we just could not lose to Tech. That was a horrible feeling. Do you take any positives back from the rest of the season? I mean, we did play well in the Sugar Bowl without winning, but do any positives remain with you from the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard. When we lost to Maryland similarly to how we lost to Georgia Tech. We were dominating them again. We were aggressive, and then we put on the brakes. And and so those were a couple of games that, I think back on that season. I'm like, man, those were tremendous missed opportunities. Granted, to lose someone the caliber of Sean Moore, of course, is going to devastate anyone. But we stopped playing our brand of defensive football in those two games and allowed teams to get some confidence and momentum. The Virginia Tech game, we were just never in that game. I mean, it was on the road, weather was horrible. Sean was gone. I mean, it was mentally we weren't there. And then, with the Sugar Bowl, Tennessee was highly rated. They were loaded with NFL talent. Everybody was talking so much trash about us. I just remember being so pissed at our media, because one of the things that I told our media was like, you can always talk about Tony Covington, but don't you dare talk about my team because you don't know what we've been through, And so I remember the pregame press conferences, they've been interviewing people all week, and I had not gotten a single interview request, which was surprising. But okay, so I think it was the last day of media. They called me in, and I remember Coach Spaz. He was saying he's like, "Well, don't say anything stupid." And I was like, "I don't say." I said, "I never say anything stupid." I said, "I tell the truth, and people don't know how to handle it." So I go and I'm sitting in the press conference, and they're asking me questions, and I am very curt and short. Yes, no. Not sure. I don't know. We'll see. And so one of the reporters said, "Well, Tony, we've always had such a great relationship. You seem to be very short with us today." And I said, "Well, I told you guys a long time ago that you could talk about Tony Covington, but don't you dare talk about my team. So let's just peel back the envelope." I said, "You," and I quoted all these different things that each one of these guys had said about us. And I said, "So with that being said, make sure you all get a good seat, get your popcorn. You're in for a treat." Got up and walked out, because I was disgusted with them. And because I was just like, how dare you, where we've taken this program from, we go through some adversity in the season. How do you think we feel? And it was just, that didn't matter. And so I was, and then for us to come out and absolutely manhandle Tennessee with a hurt Sean Moore.
Yeah.
If Sean Moore is healthy that game, we blow them out.
Yeah.
But we're up 16, goose egg at halftime. What do? We do exactly what we did defensively versus Georgia Tech and versus Maryland. We called off the dogs. Their quarterback was the weakest link, Andy Kelly. They were loaded. You got Alvin Harper, Carl Pickens. You got dudes, 2 first-round tackles, running back, and then defense. We're not even going to talk about all the first rounders on the defense.
Wow.
And we are just manhandling them. We pulled the brakes up again, halftime. They made a couple of plays. We lose on the last second touchdown, and so we showed we should have won, but didn't get the dub.
Well, I had a good time. Had some drinks and stuff, but it was a long drive home through Tennessee. People honking at me and flipping me off. I wish you guys could have won that game, but it was a great effort. I was so proud of the way you guys played. It was truly the UVA team from early in the season. And I think you're right. If Sean would have been even 80 or 90%, I think we wouldn't have had a problem. But look, all the hard work you did, it pays off. You become a 4th round draft choice of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You're a guy that you weren't really thinking about the NFL when you went to college. And I mean, a 4th round pick, that's quite an accomplishment. What was your mindset? Were you expecting to go that high, or did you want to go even higher?
I didn't think about it, quite honestly. I mean, it's not like I was out celebrating. I was at home watching TV when I got the call, and Jill Hobbs called and said, "Tony, this is Jill Hobbs from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're selecting you in the 4th round with the 93rd pick. Welcome aboard." And I was just like, "Oh my God, thank you so much." Ran upstairs. My mom was going through a battle with cancer. And so seeing her face and the smile, and it was, that's something I'll never forget. And then I went back downstairs and continued to watch TV. And, all my friends were like Tyrone Lewis always says to me, he's like, they see it come across the ticker and they're like, "Wait, they just drafted Cub. Where is he?" Nobody knew where I was. I was at home chilling. It's just, my mom was going through some things. So I was thankful. I was excited. But I had some bigger things that I was dealing with at the time.
Yeah, and you wrote very eloquently about your mother's struggle with cancer, and I Am Underdog. Folks should again pick up that book. So I talked to Jake McInerney, and I believe he was down there at Tampa Bay the same time you were down there, right?
Michael Houston.
But hadn't Jake been cut by Tampa earlier that year, or maybe it was the year before? But Jake told me it was a mess down there. Did you see it? Did you see it that way at Tampa?
Yeah. It was, I mean, going in, not really knowing what I was going into, and so not knowing that, I mean, coming from Virginia, used to winning, but then kind of going in, seeing these guys making a lot of money and them not putting the work in, them not playing like they love to play. They're just playing because they love to get a check. And that was difficult for me. Because for me, it's about the work. And so going in, even though I was starting as a rookie, and it was hard to kind of lose like we lost. We just weren't a very good football team. Had some talent. We had some guys with talent, but we just weren't very good. And so coming from a winning program at Virginia, dealing with that was hard, man. And I'll never forget Ricky Reynolds, who I was his rookie. He was a veteran corner, was really, really good. And he said, "Don't get caught up in the losing. Every day work on one aspect of your game and watch what it does for you." And I never forgot that. And I focused in on improving myself every single day and trying to be an example. And even though I was a rookie, I was a leader, on that team. And, these be what I call nut cutting time in the game. And I'm calling the defense. I'm looking to the sideline to get the call. And I'm looking, and I'm telling you, Julian, guys' eyes would be big as saucers, and I'm like, are you kidding me? These are guys that are making millions, and just the fear in their faces, dude, it was nuts, and so that's just something that I wasn't accustomed to, because I on that field, it was, for me, I'm fearless. And so to see these grown men looking at a rookie for leadership, I mean, hey, I step into it, no problem, but it was just different for me. That part was very different.
Well, what explains the fact that you're able to start right away? Not many rookies start right away in the NFL, especially and you're playing a new position. You're playing safety. Is it your work ethic again that enables you to hit the ground running?
Yeah, I mean, and just an ability to make plays. The beauty of it was because I played corner in college, I could move. I had hips. I could run, but I was physical. So there I was starting at strong safety at 188 pounds. But then when the nickel, 5 DBs come in, I'm the nickel back. When 6 DBs come in, I'm the dime back. So I'm covering these guys in the slot. I'm covering Sterling Sharp. I'm covering Chris Carter. I'm covering the level of guys that played in that slot because I had the ability to be physical, but to be able to run as well. And so it really benefited me. And I made plays. I was able to make plays.
Well, you're always at UVA. You were kind of intimidating presence. You were intimidating presence. No kind of. Is it hard to intimidate NFL players? I mean, do you?
No.
Is that okay?
No. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a mind game, and I talked as much trash as I did at that level as I did in college. But it's just, once again, it's just that belief. I mean, if I hit a guy early, I'll get up off like, oh, it's gonna be a long day for you, fella. It's gonna be a long one. And then, or you have a big hit, and as I'm looking in their huddle, trying to look and see if he's looking for me. Yeah. If I see him looking for me, I'm like, yeah, I got him. I own him. And so it is very much a mind game, and I love playing it. But you got to be able to walk the walk if you talk the talk, though.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, look, then Sam Wyche, when I believe Sam Wyche had been a assistant coach for the Redskins, because he's very familiar, but he becomes the head coach of Tampa. And it doesn't go as well for you under Wyche. What was your relationship with Coach Wyche?
Sam Wyche was a politician. At that point in his career, after coaching so long in Cincinnati, he was a politician, and Sam was more concerned about what guys were doing off the field than he was coaching guys on the field, and our results showed it. So it was a very interesting dynamic at that point in his career.
Right. Well, look, I wanted to get to a little bit about your underdog journey. So and we touched on it earlier, but I want to end on this. So you're an NFL player, and most of us athletes dream about playing pro sports. It's kind of the pinnacle. I don't think anyone ever dreams about what comes after, because that's kind of like the goal. So maybe explain your underdog journey a little bit. Talk about how here you are on top of the world. You're playing in the NFL. You're starting in the NFL, and then you got to pick yourself up with the things you learned playing college football from your fraternity. Your struggle from your mother who had passed. Talk about how you created the underdog brand in your journey.
Well, it's really started from birth. Quite honestly, my mother and I almost passed away from pneumonia at birth. And so it has been, despite all of the successes that I have had in Little League, in high school, in college, professionally, and then outside of sports professionally, I've always been underestimated and doubted my entire life, and I spent a lifetime of proving them wrong. And so that's the definition of what an underdog is. Someone that people view as having little chance of winning. But then I flip the script and be like, yeah, I'm the one you should never bet against, though, and so I embraced it. I embraced being that underdog. And then I created this brand. I created the Underdog Pledge, and the pledge is very simple. It's I am underdog because today is the beginning of the rest of my life. I will not be a prisoner to my past, but instead I will use it as a stepping stone to a brighter future. I am underdog because I believe in me. And even in my darkest hour, I know that I am never alone. I will overcome because I know that I can. And if I were you, I wouldn't bet against me. I'm a winner. I'm a survivor. I am underdog. And so that has been the pledge of what underdog means to me. And I began to share my story and realize that, man, there are so many people that have had to overcome something to get where they are today. And they are underdogs. Us as Black men, we are from birth, underdogs because of the color of our skin. We didn't ask for that, but we're saddled with it. And that's okay. Embrace it. And so there's such catharsis in being able to share the stories and the things that we've overcome. And you'd be amazed at the willingness of, if people have the willingness to be vulnerable and share their stories, you could change someone's life, because so many times people think that they're the only one going through something. And when they're sharing stories like, wow, I'm going through something similar. If he or she was able to make it through, you know what? That's the inspiration that I needed. And so I kind of created this I Am Underdog movement as a result of that. You know, the 3 stars on the shield of my logo stand for faith, family, and friendship. You know, those are kind of my guiding stars, you know, and I live through them. I Am Underdog Inc. is a tiny nonprofit that I haven't really been able to really get going yet, because I haven't been able to. Sorry, my dog is barking there.
It's okay. I can't hear it.
And so he, you know, it has been, I put everything under it, you know, so like, as you heard me talk about the life skill development for the student athletes, you know, that all of them are underdog. You know, when I'm going out to talk to kids, I talk to them about the journey and the things that they'll have to overcome. When I'm going to talk to executives, or I'm to speak internationally in Canada, you know, I am really focused on changing the mindset about overcoming adversity, you know, and I have a blueprint through chasing greatness, you know, and so that is a lot of when I'm giving a keynote speech, I talk about those different, you know, how it applies and how it's applicable, and teach you how to overcome the things that you're able to overcome, that you overcome in your life. And yeah, man, it's just, so it's kind of, I live and breathe it. Kids and people tend to really lean into it because they realize it's them, you know, and that's why it's I am underdog, you know, and when you really look into it, when you recite that pledge, you're like, wow, that's me. I wore my shirt to the farmer's market, and the guy walked up, tapped me on the shoulder, and was just like, dude, that's I love what's on the back of your shirt. And it was the pledge, you know, and just like, it's like having that underdog mentality. And, you know, an underdog mentality is someone that has the perseverance to overcome any obstacle, you know, refusing to be outworked while understanding the difference between working hard and competing is the relentless pursuit of greatness, you know. And so that's that underdog mentality that I emphasize, that I want folks to have, you know, that you can overcome absolutely anything, you know, and you're never alone, you know, in your quest.
How close is it to a ministry? And have you thought about becoming a minister? A lot of when you talked about your media work, you talked about how you like to advise the players and inspire the players. A lot of what the underdog story, there's definitely a spiritual aspect of it. Have you ever thought about being a minister?
No, I have not. You know, and it's funny, I have heard that before. Sometimes in my keynotes, people are like, man, I felt like we were going to have to pass the plate in here, or, you know, I hear people saying amen. But it's just, you know, God has been a central point of my life, you know, and all of the things that Tony Covington has been and the successes that he has had, I am nothing without my Lord and Savior. And so I am not ashamed to acknowledge him in all things that I do. And I just appreciate the gifts that he has given me. You know, by myself, I'm just not that special, you know, but with him and knowing that I have him, man, I'm pretty damn invincible.
Yeah. This has been great. I really appreciate you sharing your story with me. I encourage folks to obviously listen to you on UVA radio. Check the podcast out with the Hawk. Buy your book, get involved in an underdog movement. But I really appreciate you taking time. This has been great, and I'm looking forward to the season. What's your prediction for the UVA's record this year?
Ooh, that's tough to say. That's tough to say. You know, I want us to just have some success. I want us to take the next step. I want the kids to buy in. I want AD Williams to have some success. I want Coach Elliott to have some success. And I want these guys just to give it absolutely everything they have and show improve each and every week. And, they're underdogs. They're picked at the, at the bottom of the conference. You know what? Let's go have at it, play loose, and have fun.
That's it. Well, I hope you're listening. So, well, again, Tony, this has been great. And, I'll be down for games. My son is down there with your daughter as well. So definitely have to hook up and get a beer or something while we're down there.
Look forward to it, man. Thanks for having me, Julian.
Yeah, Tony, this has been great. Take care, buddy.